Welcome to another episode of Civic Cypher. I am your host, Ramses Ja.
He is Ramses Ja. I am honored and privileged to work with him. I am Q Ward, but I needed to say that because I'm pretty lucky to, share the airwaves with this gentleman as often as I'm allowed to. So,
man, that is very
just thought I would say that out loud.
I appreciate that, Q. I feel the same way. But for you listening to us, we have another good show in store for you today. Not as heavy as some. That's a good thing around here. And so stick around. We have a lot to talk about. We are going to be getting you caught up on some stories in the news. We're just going to kind of do some quick hits because oftentimes on this show, we end up complaining about the lack of time and the plethora of stories that are relevant to Black and brown people and marginalized people in this country. And so we're going to talk about some of the bigger stories that have been in the news cycle. We're also going to spend some time discussing ways that white supremacy harms white people.
Wow.
Yeah, you might think it's not your problem, but it is. White supremacy is not good for anybody. No supremacy is good for anybody. We're all here together, okay? So we're definitely going to spend some time talking about that. I do want to welcome a new sponsor to the show. You'll hear a bit more about them a little later, but the Unknown Fashion House is joining our list of sponsors for the show, so we want to salute them. And again, you'll hear a bit more about them later on today. But first and foremost, let's discuss some Ebony Excellence.
Shall we?
We shall. So this week's Ebony Excellence is sponsored by Hip Hop Weekly Media, and I'll be reading from thatgrapejuice.net. All right. Just weeks after making headlines for crushing King of Rock and Roll, Elvis Presley's record for most gold certified songs among male vocalists, Chris Brown has logged in the Recording Industry Association of America's history books for planting R&B's flag in yet another uncharted territory. Believe it or not, only 8 acts in the history of recorded music can boast having scored 20 or more multi-platinum singles in America over their careers. The RIAA qualifies multi-platinum as 2 million or more sold in the United States. At writing, Chris, with exactly 20 to his credit, is the only male singer in the group. Among all acts, his placement follows Lil Wayne, Beyonce, Kanye West, Taylor Swift, Eminem, Drake, and Rihanna. This means that he unseated Elvis, I think, in the 3rd category now, which I think is special because Elvis, for many of you who don't know this, became popular for performing Black music. And for Elvis to be the king of rock and roll has often been considered an affront or a whitewashing of what is indeed Black history. That's not to say that he wasn't insanely popular or anything like that, but that's like calling Eminem the king of rap.
Not to say that he wasn't talented.
Exactly
Is what I think he meant, because of course he was popular.
Talented, that's the word I was trying to say. So absolutely. So this is something that feels definitely like it qualifies for Ebony Excellence. So shout out to Chris Brown.
One time for Breezy.
All right, let's get to the news. All right. Like I said, it's not all heavy stuff.
Yeah, it's an entertaining space that we're in sometimes. And this is definitely one of those weeks.
Yeah. So first and foremost, Fox News. Fox News had to settle with Dominion Voting Systems for $787.5 million. And you had something?
I have plenty. I want you to finish your thought first.
So, in the second half of the show, we're going to talk about how white supremacy affects white people, right? But if you think about it, here's a great example right here. Fox has occupied the far right conservative media facet of this country. There's some others, but they're much, much smaller than Fox. And ever since Obama was elected to office, Fox has moved further right. Now, to anybody that can see with their eyes, hear with their ears, and has a thinking brain, we can see that Fox was responding to a facet of this country, or vice versa, that was responded to Obama's blackness, right? Not Obama's Democratic Party roots.
Not Obama's politics.
Politics, that's the word I'm trying to say. So that has culminated in this lawsuit. There's a direct lineage there, right? Now, again, to folks looking at this, they're just like, okay, well, Fox News had some bad information. They got held accountable, whatever. That's not what we're talking about here. Indeed, Fox News knowingly went on the air with stuff that wasn't credible. They pushed lies about this company, and they pushed lies about the election.
Now, Ramses, settling is not an admission of guilt.
I'm glad you brought that up, because here's what would have happened. Here's how far gone Fox viewers are. Now, Fox, people that watch Fox are never going to watch Civic Cypher, are never going to listen to Civic Cypher.
And if they do, they're going to jump in the comments and trash us.
Yeah, and that's okay. Listen, man, we pull from reputable sources here. Best you can do, right? And also we subscribe to the actual reality, the actual shared reality that it includes all of the facts. But I'm glad you brought that up. So here's what happens no matter what. Here's the effects of white supremacy on white people. Okay. And in this example, we'll say that a huge base of Fox's viewership is white folks. Oftentimes they're male, oftentimes conservative. So,
and then hyper conservative black folks that benefit from,
but that's such a tiny number.
Very, very tiny. I'm just
relative
saying the
to
ones
their
that
overall
do,
audience.
It's because it's beneficial to them in some way, not even
Personally.
because they actually believe
Indeed
the things that are being said.
So here's what happens. Dominion files a suit against Fox News, and they have all the receipts. As we now know, anybody that doesn't watch Fox News knows this. Anybody that does watch Fox News has no idea, because Fox hasn't even mentioned this, right? Dominion has all the receipts that shows that Fox knew that what they were saying was false, went on the air with it anyway, because they didn't want to lose their viewership, right? So they're tangled in it's like a snake eating its own tail, right? So had that trial played out, then Fox viewers would have assumed, in my estimation, the same way they assumed when all of the court cases that Donald Trump was involved in during the election lie stuff that he was trying to get off, that all of these judges are somehow corrupt and they're liberal, they're woke and all this sort of stuff, and that Fox would have not got a fair trial there. It's political, it's a witch hunt, blah, blah, blah. So had they gone to court and had to pay as a result of that, that's what their viewers would have taken from it. Fox, however, settling that splits the difference. So they don't have to pay 1.6, which is what they were being sued for. But critically, they have to pay something. And that paying of something is an admission. Now, if it was $1, if it was $5 million, something that was just like, not really newsworthy.
It's $787 million
and a half. Don't forget that extra 500,000. So that is not nothing. That's called consequences. Now, is it what we would have liked to have seen? But
I don't know.
Well, I'm saying. That's
right. Because listen, man, What can we do for y'all to not take all those receipts and show them to people? Over $750 million.
Run it.
All right.
Run that.
So, yeah, man, that is the settlement. The settlement amount says more than the receipts would have.
Sure.
Because you're absolutely right. Their base, which has shown that they cannot be shaken, would have called it all nonsense, all a witch hunt, all made up, all fake news.
Exactly. Now, we're going to get to their base. You hang on. So, watch this. What we would have wanted, I think me and Q or people that are kind of in the media space, you know, we would have wanted some accountability, because it's not right to outright lie to people for ratings. That's not the reason that we're in this space. I know that much. You know, when we tell hard truths, we do it. We have to eat crow. We have to apologize. If we make a mistake on this show, we come on the next week and we say it on the same show with the same energy. That officer was not wrong. Officer, and read his name. We've done that on the show, right? So it stands to reason that at least we would hold other journalists to that same standard. So we would have hoped that this would have sank that ship. You know what I mean? Or change the culture or whatever. We don't mind if you're conservative, but don't lie and don't fearmonger, right? You can have your views, you can have your beliefs, but if they're based in a shared reality, then there's the potential to make progress. If they are not, then you are making it harder for us and for your white conservative viewer base. And they just don't know it yet because you're interested in short-term profits. But here's another little silver lining. In addition to that settlement amount, Tucker Carlson was fired. Now, I mentioned that we would talk about their base, right? Fox's base. Guess what they started calling Fox News after Tucker Carlson was fired? Woke. It's you never can win with, and I saw this in a Mad magazine one time. They said you can't ever win with a bigot, right? They will bend reality like Neo in the Matrix. It's the wildest thing. So
that's intense.
Mad magazine,
Fox being woke.
Isn't that crazy? So let's go. So Tucker Carlson, for those that don't know, he's the most popular extreme right media personality.
Are you going to leave out white supremacists?
No, I was waiting for you to throw that in.
Oh,
Go
okay.
Ahead. He is
hyper bigoted.
Yeah. Very, very like if you were in the mood to get angry
extreme
about
right,
nothing,
MAGA sensationalist.
But I will say this, in his time slot, Tucker Carlson has been number one the vast majority of the time. It would be a rare instance where he'd be number two. Now, Tucker Carlson, just so you know, existed in a time slot and in a space where if you take the entire news, cable news media landscape and you look at everything that's out there, you have some media companies that lean a little bit more left. Some, of course, lean a little bit right. And then you have some that are more or less kind of center, politically speaking. There are a lot of media companies that lean left, couple that are center, and really it's just Fox on the right. And so if you take the country's population, viewing population, okay, and you assume a 50-50 split, which isn't true, but you assume a 50-50 split. 50% of the people are going to consume media, news media, that is conservative leaning. 50% is going to consume media that is, conservative leaning, and then liberal leaning, right? You have to then split the 50% that's leaning liberal among 6 news channels, news companies. And then the other 50%, you give it all to Fox. And so this is kind of the phenomenon that has allowed Tucker Carlson and Fox to take up so much of the oxygen in that space.
That paints a very synonymous picture with the way that they vote as well, the way that they show up. Yep. Right? They are a monolith. They do show up with a singular voice representing a singular cause en masse. Yep. And we are splintered in every direction that you can imagine.
Yeah.
Kind of cannibalizing each other over minuscule issues with very, very low impact, while they, swarm behind their movement and collectively support it. That part is kind of admirable.
They are definitely organized, and they have no problem exploiting the gaps. And there is no shame, and there is no problem on their end with cheating, rewriting the rules in real time, moving the goalpost, anything like that.
Put a pin in that part.
Turn a blind eye to it. No, let's do it now. Come on.
Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas was recently discovered to be accepting gifts or money, things that would appear to be bribes from hyper wealthy friends of his. Once upon a time in U.S. history, like when we were teenagers, that would have been like lead the news cycle scandal. Like a Supreme Court justice accepting gifts would have really like flipped the country on its head, and people would have been,
that's
blown away. And,
highest level.
It didn't even make the ticker. Once upon a time, someone saying, just grab them by you guys know the rest, would have instantly disqualified them from consideration to sit in the highest seat in this land. That video came out during his campaign, not after he was president.
And then he won.
And then he won. Things like that would have caused his own party to insist that he step down. You got to resign, man. This is going to make us look too bad. Our country, there's a such thing as reaching new heights. And then there's what's happened to us. So divided and extreme in our political beliefs that a very, very large chunk of our humanity has just dissolved. You are with us or against us. There is no nuance. There is no middle. So you said that there's some that are center. They're right. Yeah. It's just they're so far, Fox are so far right that normal right seems center.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And it pulls the left more toward the right too.
Yeah.
Weird.
It's what we're going through with our current administration.
Exactly.
All these things that we thought would happen for people who look, think, love, pray, believe like us didn't happen because even the quote unquote left have veered right to center.
So now this is a great aperture into the effects of white supremacy on white people, because indeed Fox News has lied to their audience. Fox News underreports stories that they need to know about,
or doesn't report them at all,
or overrepresents things that excite them, right? Under the guise of being a news or a journalistic, enterprise or something like that. And they suffer as a result of it. And I think it's illustrated in their response to the Tucker Carlson firing, because again, them calling Fox woke, woke is like this bad word on the right. We've talked about this on the show before. And strangely enough, as you mentioned, woke is what we would consider just kind of center left. And Fox News being called woke goes to show you just how skewed these people's perception of reality has become. So again, the effects of white supremacy, they don't necessarily always benefit all white people all the time. Now, you could make an argument that some of this is capitalism. We often make that argument here, but I think that this is kind of poking its head here and there. So let's move on to some other stories. Kim Potter, the officer convicted of killing Daunte Wright, was released from prison after serving 16 months of a 2-year sentence.
The officer convicted of killing Daunte Wright,
dead.
Correct?
Yeah,
he's dead
forever.
And then the jury said, yes, she did it and she was wrong.
Yep.
And then she served 16 months in prison.
And then she's serving arrest on house arrest. She's at home right now. I mean, we don't even have to go on. You know exactly how we feel about that. That can just be the headline. Let's move on. Something that you do need to know about. President Biden formally announced his candidacy for president. He's seeking a second term.
Terrifying.
And so it looks like it's going to be him versus Donald Trump again, because
terrifying.
These are the best two. Man, listen.
Terrifying.
Now Trump is under. He's has to go to court for a rape trial now too. That was also in the news this week.
Terrifying.
Not just the finance stuff. What is that thing? The Stormy Daniels stuff. He also has like a rape trial he's dealing with too. And he's just in the news so much for going to court that it didn't even make headlines, but look it up. It's there, I promise. And then little footnote, just because of time, not because it's an actual footnote. Phil Jackson. Phil Jackson is give folks a brief overview of Phil Jackson.
Phil Jackson, for those of you who are not sports fans, was the coach of the Michael Jordan era Chicago Bulls and then the Shaq and Kobe era Los Angeles Lakers. One of the winningest coaches in the history of sports, and all of his fame, wealth, and notoriety is tied directly to the success of historically talented Black men.
That Phil Jackson. He said that he hasn't watched an NBA game since 2020 because of BLM logos and slogans. And he thinks games shouldn't be political. Now, I do want to mention that Q and I have a much longer conversation about Phil Jackson that can be found on the Black Information Network Daily Podcast. I implore you to check it out. You can find it on any podcast app. And it should be one of the recent episodes, depending on when you're hearing this. But suffice it to say, for now, that non-Black people telling Black people how to protest is a slap in the face. Non-Black people telling Black people how long change should take is a slap in the face. Shout out to James Baldwin for educating us on that.
Amen.
The great ancestor that he is. And I think that it bears mentioning that a person who can be this close to Black people for such a long time, for him to still be able to harbor feelings like this is the sort of person that looks at a Colin Kaepernick and says, he shouldn't be doing that here. Not accounting for the fact that Kaepernick and everybody who is Black, our whole lives are political. And everybody who doesn't work in sports.
Yeah, through that lens, yes, our whole lives are political, but that political is a very loaded word when used in that context. You know, political used to describe something that's Black. They don't cry no politics when they fly the flag and march out the military.
Say that then.
They cry political when you say stuff like Black Lives Matter.
Ooh.
So let's be clear on what they mean when they say that.
So now you're all caught up.